Welcome to Super Meat World. Into this update, we're gonna have a little change of programming and we're gonna play instead 0 Hour by TunnelingEffect. I wanted to do Minneapolis before, but I haven't been able to pull off the thing that I wanted to do for this one update, so it'll be delayed a little bit more. But in the meantime, we're gonna play an entirely different chapter, which certainly has something different indeed. I have to say, this is one of the most unusual chapters which has ever been made for Super Meat World, mainly due to its incredibly abstract yet really minimalistic look. I mean, I'm not even sure what all of these levels are supposed to look like, and this is sort of the appeal of the chapter. And also, the main gimmick of this chapter is that the jumps that you have to do are utterly insane. You will need to master the physics of this game in order to succeed into this one chapter. You already saw it into the first level, which unfortunately is really not the best way in order to approach the chapter. I have to say, when I first played this chapter, after playing level 1, I couldn't beat it because it was like, how the hell are you supposed to do these really narrow jumps? It's just, whoops. But yeah, it was just not possible, and it was not really all that fun neither, because you were just forced to do an overly perfect jump over and over again until you finally get it, and it really wasn't fun at all. So I simply gave up on the chapter before I could even beat a level. So in the end, the first level is really not the best way to introduce a chapter, because it's probably the poorest level of the entire chapter. Once that you get later into the chapter, it will pick up, and the level will be of a much higher quality, and they will be much more fun and involving to play. Yeah, once that we get past the first 2 levels, this is where the chapter will finally get interesting. And it's quite about time, because this is not a very long chapter. In fact, it only has 11 levels in it, but rest assured, you'll be happy that it only has 11 levels, because this is one of the hardest chapters that you'll find on Super Meat World. In fact, making it through this chapter the first time took me almost 2 hours. Yep, for 11 levels. A huge part of the difficulty of this chapter is figuring out the kind of jumps that you have to do in order to succeed, because there's not a whole lot of things about this chapter which is straightforward. Many of the jumps in the chapter are really close to being pixel perfect. You do need a lot of precision into most of the jumps. And finally, you have some obstacles which really aren't all that clear. I really think that with all of the little things that you see around here, you might be able to go through it, but no, you have to go around it. And it's a shame, because I really wanted to get inside such a thing like that, because it really will feel neat. I really like the look of some of these levels though. It seems as if you're into some kind of dystopian realm in which there's absolutely nothing remaining, or you're into some sort of computer-generated realm where there's absolutely nothing which makes any kind of sense. And yeah, this level is much trickier than it seems. In order to do the jumps properly, you need to wall jump at the bottom of the diamond-shaped platforms, which definitely isn't all that obvious or even intuitive. You would not even expect that you'd be able to grasp onto them. I'm honestly surprised at how well some of the recording of this chapter has been, because this is one chapter that I was expecting to take a long time before I will finally beat, but it definitely went better than I expected. This level definitely has a couple of really hard jumps to do. In most of the level, it's pretty much all about wall sliding. Yeah, you need to do your slides really to the point of perfection here. You're just gonna slide high enough so that you'll be able to go all the way up there. And well, if you fail to do the jump properly, well, you're either gonna slide down back to the bottom of where you started, or the second slide is slightly easier to do, but instead you'll just end up crashing against the one saw blade at the top. Holy shit, these are huge saw blade launchers that we have here. The biggest danger of this one part is to fall onto one of the saw blades while it's being shot, and finally they kept the worst jump of the level for last. This is really hard to do, because this is one of those jumps that once again require you to be pixel perfect. Alright, we're getting back into the urban grid of turquoise colors. Yeah, when I was talking about some of the computer computer-like look that you see into this one chapter. This is the kind of thing that I'm kind of referring to, but here we go! Thankfully we didn't have to redo this jump a million of times. Instead it just ended up so that the middle part of the level was pretty much where I've died almost every single time. Oh boy, this level was a pain in the ass. This one definitely took quite a lot of tries before I will finally get it right. You may guess it by all of the distance that you see between platforms, but these jumps are really finicky to do. Just having a slight miscalculation on the place where you start to jump make it so that you'll hit one of the other walls and you'll die instead. And finally, things get even better as you progress. Yeah, you have to do a wall jump off this tiny platform, and in fact you have to do all of these really finicky jumps of really tiny platforms. Oh my goodness, I have absolutely no clue how the fuck I did that on my first try. Took me so long the other time that I've played this one level. Instead, just ended up so that I've died on the first jump of the level. But yeah, around level 5 you definitely see a huge increase into the quality of the level design for the most part. The levels are pretty involving, they're really challenging, and finally you have this level, which is my favorite level of the chapter, although there's one glitch that the author didn't account for. You can still press a button even though the platforms are there. But still, I'm really a sucker when it comes to those levels where you have to push a whole lot of buttons, and this is one of the mechanics that I thought was overwhelmingly underused into the original game, and there was only like 1 or 2 levels into the game which had that. The last one I think was 719? But either way, I really like all of these levels in which you have to press a million of buttons in order to open up a whole lot of platforms, up to the point that, well, it almost feels so hypnotic. I was just too busy staring at the platforms fading away that I simply forgot where I was. And for a change, this level also involves way more timing and precision, which is a nice change of pace for the chapter. And I really love the look of this level too. The set of moving platforms that you see here almost make it look like some sort of disfigured human face with the most distorted smile that you've ever seen. All in all, it definitely is my favorite level of the chapter. This level is, well, how to be put it simply, it's really painful. That actually was the last level of the chapter that I've managed to beat, because, well, truth be told, I was not expecting to be able to beat this level at all, because yeah, you have those 2 really tricky jumps to do, the one over the saw blade and the one up the wall here where you have to do a really tight corner jump in order to get up. You can do the first jump fine enough if you let go of the run button, but into the other one you have to use the same tactic that you use in Skyscraper. Oh my god, that was really bad. But yeah, you have to do a wall jump off that other wall in order to be able to scale all the way up this really tiny narrow hole in which you have to go through, and you will see that it's a huge pain in the ass. And finally, once again, this jump is at the very end of the chapter. Yeah, this is the kind of jump that you have to do minus hitting the saw blade, because usually if you fail this jump, unless that you have really good reaction time, you're probably gonna die pulling off this jump. Bearing those 2 sections, the rest of the level is not all that hard, but this jump can also be pretty tricky. But it's not the hardest thing that you have to do into this one level and chapter. We're pretty much gonna save this honor for the bandage that you see on the right. It may be the only bandage that you see into the chapter, but it's a doozy to get. We'll come back to it a little bit later. Alright, tiny, narrow, perfect jump to the rescue. When I was talking about the unusual nature of some of these jumps, you pretty much have the proof positive into this one level. This is pretty much a good summary of what 0 Hour is all about. Oh boy, it's time for the bandage now, and yeah, this is definitely a fun thing to do in which you're gonna die a million of times like this, trying to pull off the perfect jump that you have to do in order to escape. There are 2 ways in order to do the jump. You either let go of the jump button at a really precise time as you're about to hit the other saw blade on the top, but you're not gonna fall on the saw blade below. Oh my god! And you also have to be careful because you may also end up dying in a ridiculous way like this. But yeah, see how narrow this jump is. Yeah, Either you jump way too late and you end up dying on the one saw blade which is close to the wall, or you'll hit the one saw blade on the top. This is ridiculous as a jump. I mean, it's so simple to get the bandage, but getting out of there is almost impossible. In fact, when I recorded this one bandage, I've died more times than it took me in order to beat this entire chapter. And whenever you'll see the death count at the end, it will pretty much all come together. But yeah, you might have seen that I've got a whole lot inside the bandage area, but I've only managed to get out of there like 3 times. All in all, this one section is a real pain in the ass. But hey, if you want challenge, this chapter is entirely for you. This is another one of these levels which rely on falling key and well, the gimmick behind the level is pretty simple to grasp, and in fact, it's not as overwhelmingly precise than the last few levels have been, but it's still a pretty tricky level because you need to have some pretty good timing, and whenever you hit those buttons by accident, then you pretty much have to deal with it and make sure that you're able to salvage your mistakes. Sometimes you do it, and some other times you don't. At least in order to add variety to the level, both of the sides of the screen offer different jumps for you to pull off. So it's always nice to switch up things every once in a while. It probably is possible to do this one wall jump in order to get the first key while going back and forth, but it's much easier for me to simply go all the way down and restart all over again. And the second half of the level is not as easy because you need to do a wall jump here in order to be able to get up there, and obviously you have to fuck up the very first key. Which is always nice considering how long it can be in order to get all of those 6 keys perfectly. I'm not too sure that there's been anything which went well into this one run, so let's try it again. We'll try starting with the right side of the screen first. Maybe this will allow us some kind of advantage that I really cannot fathom because I'm not too sure that it'll change anything in the long run because both of the sides of the screen happen to be pretty hard on their own merits. And here we go. We only have the final obstacle to go through, and thankfully this one... okay. This level certainly wasn't a hurry of being finished, but yeah, the last part of the level is not all that hard to do. And then again, it should be considering how hard the other parts of the level are leading to this one. This is another one of these levels that you may take a decade in order to figure out, unless that you finally see that in order to finish this level, you need to walk. Yeah, if you're trying to do these wall jumps while running, you'll end up colliding against the other side of the block. You will not even be remotely close to do all of these jumps, but as soon as you figure out that you have to walk, this is one level that really isn't all that hard. Yeah, I mean, once that you get past this other part of the level, the rest is pretty easy. I gotta say, that late in the chapter, I was not gonna expect the level to take as little time to do, but, well, it always seems as if we need some relief every once in a while. If this level is the author's way of saying thank you, then I pretty much think that he secretly hates everyone who has been playing his chapter. But then again, TunnelingEffect himself said that this level was way too hard compared to most of the other levels into the chapter because it was done kind of in a hastily way and it didn't really have that much playtesting done on it, so yeah. The beginning portion of this level is way harder than the other part, and in fact, I'm pretty much gonna die about half of my deaths on this one saw blade because the jump that you have to do over it has to be perfect. Oh my god, will I finally do it already? Okay, maybe I will or maybe I will not, but yeah, that's a good representation of what it's like to try this one part of the level. This jump is way too narrow, and in fact, I'm really not sure why it is that way, because it's really not fun jumping over this one saw blade in order to figure out the one trajectory that you have to take in order to succeed through it. Mainly because after that, the rest of the level is not all that difficult. I mean, it's still pretty hard. I mean, the ascent portion that you have to do here in order to get up is really tricky because the jumps are pretty hard to do, but they're nowhere near as finicky than this one jump. And once that you successfully manage to climb all the way up there, the worst has been passed. Those jumps are pretty tricky, but they're not the worst that the chapter has offered to us. And that'll be it, we're finally done with 0 Hour. And we would like to thank you for playing Thank You, because we would like to thank you for doing that. Okay, that was overly convoluted, but that's pretty much beyond the point. And yeah, this death counter doesn't count the one bandage that I got into the fort. If you wanted to include them, I'm pretty sure that you will go all the way up to 170 something, because that's how many times I've died. So that's it for 0 Hour, and stay tuned for Minneapolis for real.